meeting of uh, Committee of the Whole for Budget, and this is for March 24, and move receipt of those minutes. Councillor Kroll, Councillor Diendrad, all in favor? Thank you. And the General Operationals Preliminary Budget Update, 6.3.2. Recommendations in there are for the music and the landing be held that they be maintained at 18,900, that the grants of assistance budget remain at 20,000, and that the police reserve be reduced to 1%, and that $8,000 of Sunshine Coast Community Services, police-based victim services be approved, and that the $8,000 become a line item in the budget for police-based victim assistance. And further, the Chamber of Commerce be approved for $5,000 upon application by the Chamber to fund projects that support local business. Any questions around those? Moved, Councillor Ladwig, Councillor Lumley. Oh, question? Go ahead.
Just with regard to, and I just need to be reminded, with regard to the 8,000 for the police-based victim services being a line item in the budget, that will get rolled into our policing budget when the time comes for us to be funding our own police department, correct?
It will. It'll become part of policing, but it'll be part of the bigger context of costs. It'll probably still show up as a police-based victim assistance, but it won't be part of the policing costs. That we actually pay that money to the province, the policing cost money. So this $8,000 will be paid to community services. It is a separate program, but it's also supported by the province, probably the Minister, Solicitor General, but it's not the same as the policing budget itself.
Okay.
They have this down at Seashelt as well. They have it as a separate item in the budget. Councillor Kroll?
I believe in Seashelt, what they do is it's actually funded out of fines. So they have something to offset it, but it is, once you hit 5,000 people, then your portion of the victims assistance program is sort of an integral part of policing.
Part of set, yeah. So we will have additional revenue to offset that. So I think so. Yeah.
Okay.
Will somebody move those recommendations? Councillor Lumley, Councillor Kroll, or did you have a question, Councillor Lumley? Okay, sorry, you have to mute. You're muted.
Sorry. Yeah, just with respect to the 18,009 for the music and the landing, I was wondering, I know there's going to be a lot of bills, a lot of things that come out of this that we're not expecting. And I know Seashell has actually, they've canceled every public event right up to Canada Day. So I'm just wondering, I know that the music and the landing starts, like, if I'm not correct, late April or early May, which isn't going to happen. So I'm just wondering how much of this budget they're going to need, like, say, this stretches into July or even August without any large gatherings. I mean, it's just, I know there's going to be some other, you know, at first glance at this, at 6.3.2, the smartest bit of money, I mean, victim services aside, obviously people need help, but the smartest money on this page right now is the Chamber of Commerce, who can help small businesses after all this is, settles down, hopefully. So that was my question, was you know, how do we budget that for events that might not even happen? So.
Well, my thought is we can't see the future in the context of whether they'll happen or not. But if they don't happen, we don't expend the money, and so that we don't write that check to music and the landing at this time. So that means that the money would be either go into next year's surplus, or it could be reallocated in September when we reallocate the budget for other purposes. So if it's not expended, if it's not used for that purpose, there may be some ideas, like I think they've already held one online conference, so there may be some things that will be done differently. But I certainly, it's like the the parade and other activities, we're hoping that the community is going to have a chance to celebrate together at some point this year. And it'd be nice to be able to ensure that we have those funds set aside for that purpose. If it doesn't happen, the money won't be spent, and that'd be it. So,
yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
there's homeless and obviously there's all sorts of different situations that are taking place, like food bank, people just because of their position, the decline in food bank donations and so on and so forth. So that's all I was just thinking there might be, if it doesn't happen there, maybe we can reallocate it to some people that might need it.
and we can do that. I mean, we look at this budget quarterly. So the end of our second quarter is going to be, second quarter of the end of June. And we could do some reallocation at that time if we need to.
Okay.
But at least it's there in the event we have an opportunity to celebrate. And I think that when we do have that opportunity, people will welcome that chance. So we'll see. So somebody would like to move those changes? Councillor Kroll, Councillor D'Andrade, all in favor? Thank you. That's approved. The capital projects 5-year plan, a recommendation that staff prepare the 24, no, actually, it's a recommendation for the previous minutes that they prepare the plan with a 4% tax increase, and that the 2024 5-year financial plan include capital project list funded in the current report. I'm just looking at first resolution on that. The 4% tax increases for 2020 only, is it not? Should we state that in the resolution? Staff prepare the 2020-24 5-year financial plan for public presentation with a 4% tax increase for 2020. Would that be inappropriate?
These are the recommendations that came from the Director of Finance. Maybe she would be able to jump in at this point.
Yeah.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. Yeah, that correction is fine. The 4% really does refer to the 2020
That's correct. Okay.
budget. Thank you.
With that understanding, would somebody move those two recommendations? Councillor Kroll. Oh, so Councillor D'Andrade, you have a question? Can we turn you on?
I just noticed that on the budget presented, it says 23 for the grants, small grants. I mean, it's a small correction, but it's just, it's one of the lines when she presents the budget. So I think we approved just 20, right? Am I correct?
What's that one? Sorry, what line item?
Grant of assistant remains at 20, right? But on the budget, I saw the line as 23.
I can speak to that if that helps.
Please, thank you.
So the grants of assistance program budget is confirmed at 20,000.
Yes.
That line also includes other one-time grants, and that would include the Seniors Society grant that's being funded this year.
Good.
Okay.
So, but the base is 20,000.
Thank you. Thank you. Okay, Councillor Lumley, I think you moved it. Or Councillor Kroll move it. Councillor Lumley second it. All in favor? Thank you. That's approved. So now we come down to the Plan and Development Committee for April 7th, 2020. And the first one is the 6.4.1 development permit for form and character, DPA 5 for 263 Gar Point Road. Recommendation here is that we strike the words Planning and Development Committee at this point, and that council recommends the council approves the DPA lot for $6, but all that stuff with the gable ends extended, window trim included, signing, naming the building be incorporated on the north end of the building, and signing or other features be added to better identify public space. And is that consistent with what you saw earlier on today? Councillor Lumley?
I should recuse myself
Yes, you should.
for potential pecuniary conflict. I have a question for the Director of Corporate Services before I leave. Do I just use the same codes to jump back in? Like, you're gonna text me? What's that? I can't hear you.
I muted. My screen just showed me that too. Yes, if you want to exit the meeting now, you can use the same link to rejoin, and I'll
Okay.
text you when you can rejoin.
Perfect. All right. See ya.
Okay. Question on this before is there any question before we move it? Councilor Diandrad?
I have a question, perhaps to the Director of Planning. I'm just wondering if the unit in the corner becomes a restaurant that stays open late, for example, that serves alcohol, is there any covenant just because they're residents on top? I mean, is there any restriction? I'm just wondering.
Through the mayor, no, there aren't any covenants required at this time. The use is permitted under zoning, so we don't require covenants for mixed uses unless it's industrial.
Okay. And in case if happens, do residents have the complaint, like the right to complain or something? How does it's just the relationship with, if there's noise in the bar late, for example, if there's a bar there?
Yeah, that is a good question. We would receive complaints. We would look at the uses and what's allowed on the property, and if they're consistent with their use and their liquor license, and they're operating within the hours that they said they'd be operating in, then it would be a difficult one to enforce.
Councilor Kroll?
The situation with residential over commercial, it in other areas of the town, it actually exists where it's the other way around. You have commercial over residential. There's restaurants that serve liquor. They've got patios, open decks, and there hasn't been an issue. I think if someone goes into a residential situation and knows they're over commercial, they're not thinking they're going to go to bed at 7:30 and have a good night's sleep. It just doesn't happen. And I think people are aware when they buy in, they know what they're buying into. And there's only the one potential place there that could be an issue, which is the corner lot that has the upper patio. So look at Europe. There's residential above commercial all over the place, and it's not an issue.
Yeah, Councilor Ludwig?
I was just going to say, there's actually a residential unit above Molly's as well. So it does exist everywhere, and it is a good model. And I agree with Councillor Kroll that you don't buy into these situations if you're not comfortable with that situation. So,
Councilor Diandrad?
I was just wondering if someone buys when it's a cafe, for example, and then a few years later it changed to a bar. I think it's one of these situations that I'm envisioning. I mean, it's quite different if it's a cafe, would close to a certain time, and a bar would stay longer.
Councilor Kroll?
You have a building which, because it's multiple units, and I believe it's being strata titled and sold, a change in business would have to go before the strata, and the members of the strata council would have a voice.
Yeah, that's your property management guy coming out on you now. That's right. Yeah. Okay. And there are those issues are there to be resolved between the tenants and the owners. There was problems in town here several years ago with the building that is across the street from the Black Bean. The Chinese restaurant on the upper floor. And the tenants down below. We got a lot of complaints and had to actually mediate complaints between the tenants below and the business above. In that case, it was one of not only noise complaints because the floors were not soundproofed enough, but it was people sitting out on the restaurant deck throwing cigarette butts over the side. But I think they've resolved that issue at that location as well. So there is a solution for all these things. People just have to work together to find them. So that being said, does somebody want to move the recommendations in? Councillor Kroll, Councillor Ludwig, all in favor? Thank you. That's approved. And now we can invite Councillor Lumley to come back.
Yes, I'm on it.
Okay, thank you. Take a breather. But yeah, that problem in that building was not insignificant. And as administrator, they asked me to do the mediation between them and the parties. So, Councillor Ludwig?
I heard that there used to be a nightclub and where the Christ Church is down below.
Mr.
Councillor
King,
Crow's
there
office.
used to be a nightclub there, actually, and there was quite a party place, as Councillor Crowe probably remembers, before my time. But
Yes,
It
before
was,
my time.
it was Elfie's Cabaret.
Yeah.
And interesting because today at the we were our Lindsay Grist had a meeting with Ed Hill, and we were talking about the Business Watch, and it was decided that the hours that would work, but when Elfie's Cabaret was open, it didn't close until 2.
Hmm.
And it was a real problem. Like Beachcombers couldn't even film on nights that it was open.
Yeah.
Well, that's what a liquor license for a nightclub is 2 o'clock. I think now it's even 3 actually.
Right.
I think the nightclub liquor license.
Yeah, I don't know what it's like down there when the pub closes on the corner, whether that causes confusion in that location as well. So,
Oh, the grandmas, you mean?
yeah.
Yeah, I think that's a different license. I don't know for sure, but I think pubs are different. There's our
Welcome back, Councillor Lumley.
there's our liquor license guy. He probably knows.
Okay, we're moving on to 6.4.2, the covenant amendment for 1000 Venture Way, and the recommendation of planning that the council directs staff to amend the section of 219 covenant registered on the property at 1000 Venture Way to allow for a minimum of 39 apartment units consisting of at least 15 one-bedroom, 18 two, and 6 three-bedroom units. Do we need to say in what way we're amending that particular covenant at this time, or just that we amend the covenant? We're not saying what we're allowing.
That recommendation does say what you're allowing. So it states that to allow for a minimum of 39 apartment units consisting of at least 15 one-bedroom units,
Yeah.
18 two-bedroom, and 6 three-bedroom.
Okay. That's the new provision, essentially. Okay. Thank you. Okay. First of all, somebody move that. Councillor Ludwig?
Sorry, would it be beneficial to say 39 rental apartment units?
I'll let Leslie Ann speak to this.
The zoning requires them all to be rental units,
Okay.
and the covenant further secures it. And what it does here is it requires a mix of 1 bedroom, 2 bedroom, and 3 bedroom. So they can't all be 1 bedroom units, for example.
Okay.
So we don't need to say rental in the resolution then. Yeah.
No.
Okay. Thank you. With that understanding, somebody like to move that? Councillor Lumley?
And discussion.
Okay.
I'll wait for a seconder.
Okay. Councillor D'Andrade, discussion?
Is there any reason to guard against any of these units becoming short-term rentals? I don't know if there's.
Well, that'll be our bylaw, or would probably provide that direction, but to Director of Planning?
Thank you. So yeah, we would be drafting a bylaw that would come forward. Right now, we don't regulate short-term rentals. So through the short-term rental bylaw, we could limit where they'd be allowed.
Yeah. Thank you. Any further discussion? All in favor? Thank you. That's approved. Administration reports. Now we come down to the budget itself, and 7.1, Director of Finance, final 2020 operational budget. Would you like to speak to this, Director of Finance?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. So this report contains the final versions of the water, sewer, and general operations and capital budgets. And so the water and sewer operational and capital budgets were presented on January 22nd of this year. The recommended 5% user rate and parcel tax increases and the preparation of the corresponding bylaws was approved by Council on March the 3rd. Discussions regarding the 2020 general operations budget began at the February 25th Committee of the Whole. Additional meetings were held on March 10th, 17th, and 24th. And so at the March 24th meeting, the Committee of the Whole made the final recommendations to Council regarding the general operations as well as the capital budgets. And this report summarizes the decisions made at the March 24th meeting, which Council just adopted earlier in this meeting. So the final recommendations were to authorize an overall 4% tax increase, which will generate funding for the additional operational items that you just approved, $32,000 allocation to the new policing reserve, about $118,000 in taxation funding for the 2020 capital projects, and about $6,500 in taxation funding to be transferred to the operational reserves if not required for unplanned expenditures this year. And it was acknowledged that the uncertainty remains regarding the overall impact that COVID-19 related events may have on the budget, and that adjustments to allocations may be required later in the year. So based on direction given to staff to date, it's a recommendation that we be directed to prepare the 2020 financial plan bylaw and the 2020 annual tax rate bylaw for Council's approval. And I've attached, attachments have been provided the detail on the various budget items, and staff are pleased to answer any questions that Council may have. Thank you.
Thank you very much. First of all, I'll
You're
take a motion to receive the report. Councillor Kroll, Councillor Ludwig, all in favor of receipt? Thank you. Discussion. Is there any questions for the Director of Finance? Councillor Lumley?
Well, my discussion is probably for the Director of Finance and Council, I guess. I wondered if we wanted to do anything on this budget with the business tax ratio. Again, you're going to have like a lot of, it's relatively high compared to other communities. And there's going to be a real setback for a lot of small businesses. This is, everyone knows what it is. It's a ratio of how many times more businesses pay on property tax than residents. And I just I'd like to revisit it, but also it's going to obviously impact the budget. And I had another query was that I don't know if we understand like the impact of if any of these people are going to be deferring their property taxes and how that might affect the cash flow for the town. But that's the first one was the business tax ratio. I just don't know if I know we kept taxes down for people to help people. I just wondered what we would like to do for the businesses, because this is a tax that just passed along from corporations that own commercial properties to the businesses themselves. So.
I don't think this is the time, actually, Councillor Lumley. The time that we'll do that is when the tax rate bylaw comes back to us, I believe. But Director of Finance, is that correct?
Actually, if Council does want to change the business tax ratio, now's the time, because when I bring the tax rate bylaw to Council for 3 readings and adoption, the ratio's already been determined, so it's getting a bit late. I can comment though that the 2019 business tax ratio was 3.1225, and this year it's 2.9718, so it has gone down compared to last year.
And we did reduce it last year, as I recall.
That's right. Yeah. Yeah.
3.24.
Yeah. And the tax deferment program, we have about 250 residential properties that participate in that, and the cash flow it's slightly delayed, but it's not significant because we are quite proactive in submitting those agreements or renewals to the province, and so as soon as we get them, we pass them on. So I expect there might be a bit more participation in that program this year, but we will be really active in forwarding that onto the province and getting those approvals as soon as we can.
And that money all comes from the province to us.
Yes. That's right. So when someone does defer their taxes, they claim their homeowner grant, and then they choose how much to defer, and mostly it's the remainder of their taxes. And then the application goes to the province approves, and then the town does get the funds. And really it's a loan arrangement between the resident or the owner and the province, but the town does get the funds. So we do get the cash.
So dealing with the business tax rate, is there any appetite to reduce that further? I'm actually quite comfortable to see it under 3. That was certainly one of the targets I had, and I'm happy to see that's been achieved. But is there anything else that council would like to see? Councilor Lumley, did you have a rate in mind or a thought in mind?
I know Seashells is quite lower, if I'm not correct. Am I correct on that?
I would have to look, I'll see if I can look that up real quick.
I know it is. I just like to come in line with more of the communities like closer to us instead of, you know, but it doesn't matter. I mean, I'm just saying that. And the other tax deferral I was talking about wasn't the normal one. It was,
Oh, I see.
It was due to the provincial program to help people due to COVID-19.
Yeah.
Because I think there's a program people can, they're going to introduce programs where you can defer your property taxes or a large portion thereof above and beyond any normal program. So anyway, that was just my question.
Ladwig, throw your hand first. Councillor Ladwig?
I actually had a question for Councillor Lumley. I mean, I've been trying to watch the different financial aid programs from the governments, but I have been waiting to hear about support for small businesses. Have you been tracking that at all? I know that,
yeah, I'm going to be applying for the federal program, but provincial program, like I said, provincial program is for the property taxes of commercial buildings, right? So
but are you, for example, are you getting, or can small businesses get deferrals on their rents, their commercial leases? No. That's what I was wondering.
The landlord, my landlord, would have to apply for it and then pass that relief on to the tenant.
Right.
So and I think there's kind of a watchdog thing they're going to put in place in case people do apply for it and then don't pass it on to their tenants. Yeah. But I know that there's that program in place for commercial lease tenants.
Councillor D'Andrade? Mute, please, mute.
I noticed that we have some, I believe it was $63,000 in interest. Not sure, maybe the finance director of finance can correct me, but I wonder if there's any way, and that is feasible, obviously, that the town could work like, you know, some sort of free some interest or something down the line when time, or I don't know, or even recent. Is there any possibility for a interest relief?
I can speak to that.
Yes, please. Please do.
So the property tax, so regarding property taxes, the town is under the charter, there's 2 tax collection schemes. We're under the regular scheme, which is basically the due date is July the 2nd set by the province, and the penalty is 10% the day after. Some municipalities like Sechelt, there's an alternate scheme that by a bylaw council can pass and keep the due date the same to encourage people to still pay their taxes, those that can, because we need the cash flow to pay out their requisitions and just operations. But there is some flexibility on the percentage. So Sechelt, what they do is they do 5% and then 5% later in late August, early September. And I had read this afternoon that Kelowna has deferred, I think, kept the due date, but they changed their tax percentage. They kept it at 10%, but delayed it until September the 1st, I believe. So that's the flexibility I'm seeing right now that some of the local governments are doing, keeping the due date the same, but potentially easing off on the 10% and staggering it somewhat.
Yeah, those are good options. All right. Yeah. Do we have to do that now if we were to do that, or could we do that later in the cycle?
Well, I looked into it earlier today, and there is the adjustment to the SHEAM has to be in our the annual tax rate bylaw. And so we have to do it sort of sooner rather than later. It also will impact our tax notices and how we get them printed and what communication we say. And so we have until, that would be late April, would be pushing it, but we could still probably do that. I was planning on bringing the tax bylaws to council either April 21st or April 28th. So if council wanted to explore one of those options, I could bring a report to the 21st potentially that has that, if you give me some guidance as to what you might be thinking.
I'm familiar with the one in Seashell, the 5 and 5,
Yeah.
5 and plus 5, so they're making it 5% initial penalty and later August or September increasing it to the second 5%.
That's right. Yeah, that's right. And they've had that in place for quite some time. We tend to follow we follow the provincial collection scheme, which is also the rural areas as well. So we're consistent with them. But Seashell has had an alternate scheme for a while. Yeah. I'm just looking up Kelowna, and it was 10% penalty for late payment of property taxes moved to September 1st, although those who can meet the current tax due date are urged to do so to maintain the city's cash flow for essential purposes. So they basically just moved the 10% up until the 1st of September.
How does council feel about that? I mean, I think that's a good message to put out, reducing the penalty. There is the case of if we don't have any penalty at all, you're not going to get your taxes potentially till September, in which case we need them sooner. But the incentive to pay them earlier and have a reduced tax interest penalty, to me, is a good one. Yeah, I hear a thumbs up and a hands up. Is a hands up for a question, or Councillor Ledwig first? Yeah.
I'm not sure. I support that, but I don't think it's really getting at what Councillor Lumley was looking for. But I'll let Councillor.
No, that's a different thing. Totally.
Right. Sorry, we've kind of drifted a little bit.
Tax rate bylaw for businesses, and I guess not knowing. I mean, I know that last year we looked at it, and Seashell was running at or around that 3%, a little bit lower. I'm happy to see that we are now below 3% in ours.
Seashell's at 2.33. I just looked it up.
2.33.
Yeah.
Okay.
Sorry, which community, Councillor Lumley?
Seashell.
2.33. And is that for last year?
We are 2.
That was from 2019. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Councillor Diendrad. Mute, please. Thank you.
Oh, I was on mute. Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you now. Yeah.
I understand what Councillor Lumley is saying. I think my only concern when I think about Seashell, they have way more money. They get extra money, so I think they have more flexibility. And what I see the town of Gibsons, we are such a small, community. So that's the part that I feel nervous with when we compare with Seashell. Somehow, I don't think we can compare with Seashell. I think we can look at us and see how far can we go. But to make a comparison with Seashell, I feel a little bit like uncomfortable.
Yeah. Councillor Lumley.
Okay, I mean, we don't have to do it. It was something that I was concerned with, but you have to remember that there's a larger percentage of residents in Gibsons that actually don't live here. But a large percentage of people that do live here operate small businesses. So, I mean, for example, that the Airbnb that was stopped because, or I think they were stopped because they had they weren't exercising the health restrictions that were imposed on gatherings. What's that?
We didn't stop any.
No, but it happened, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, and that the people that own that building are live in the United States.
That's correct, yeah.
So just in the back of your mind, I think I read at one point around there's about as far as the homes in Gibsons and like a little bit of the surrounding area, like they're over 60%. They're not primary residences. So another thing with the interest, which is a good idea for people that need it. I certainly don't want to become an opportunity for someone to get a low interest loan by not paying their taxes to the town. So let's make sure it doesn't become an incentive to not pay your taxes on time because I don't have to pay interest on that money.
Councillor Kroll?
Sort of to address what Councillor Lumley was saying, if people have residences here that aren't their principal residence, then they can't claim the homeowner grant. Do we have any indication of the residences in the town, how many people actually aren't able to claim their homeowner grant?
Director of Finance?
Yes, we do. I have a stat on that. If you just give me a moment, I will look that up. And I also want to comment on the business tax ratio and the penalty as well. Just give me a moment to.
I think that we could actually, when we come down to the budget bylaw, I mean, as I recall, last year when we looked at the business tax ratio, we actually had a Excel spreadsheet that allowed us to change the ratios, and we saw how that impacted the residential. When we reduce the business tax, the money has to go somewhere, so it just transferred on to the residential.
That's right. Yeah,
so,
but usually that's at this type of meeting, not when the bylaws are actually being presented to council.
yeah.
So I do have information on the percentage of homeowner grants claimed versus total residential buildings. So we're at 70% of homeowner grants claimed of all the residential buildings in town. So that'll give you a sense of how many are residents here. The comment I want to make about the business tax ratio is that adjusts itself automatically based on changes to assessment. So if commercial assessment goes up versus residential goes down, that business tax ratio moves. One area that council can look at is basically the tax burden, which is basically the percentage of how much tax dollars each class pays. And so for 2019, residential paid 69.19% of taxes dollar-wise, and commercial was 28.63. And so for 2020, it's looking at about 69.36, so a bit higher for residential, and commercial is paying 28.5. So it's almost a 70-30 split between residential and commercial in terms of tax burden, which is the dollars, which really gets at the, I think the point Councillor Lumley is trying to convey. And the other comment I want to make about the penalty, Councillor Lumley's comment is really good, because we don't want to discourage people from, or encourage them from delaying paying their taxes, because we still have annual requisitions to submit. So we have to remit our other agency requisitions to the province, to the school tax, as well as the regional district and BC assessment. So yeah, so it's a challenging situation to try and give a relief, but still encourage people who can pay to pay on time.
I would like to suggest, though, that we do look at a relief in terms of the staggering that tax penalty, 5% as of the beginning of July, and maybe the 10% coming into play in September, to allow people to have it that way. So there's an incentive to pay it early, disincentive to delay it, and whether we take it to September or take it to August, but we still move forward, and we're not removing the penalty altogether. How does council feel about doing that? Councillor D'Andrade, I got a thumbs up. Anybody else? David? Councillor Lumley, Councillor Ludwig, any comments on that? No. Okay. Would somebody make that motion? Well, I can make that motion that we that the tax penalty be applied at 5% as of July, whatever that beginning date in July is, the day after due, I guess.
Mhm.
And what would you like, 10% as of the beginning of August or 10% as of the beginning of September?
Uh,
Councilor-
sorry, it would, sorry to jump in. I'm just looking at Seashelts, and they do as practical on or after August 31st. They do a second 5% of the taxes remaining in, they say early September 4th, and really it has to be early September at the latest, because otherwise it'll impact the tax sale and the calculations for that. So
Well, I'd be comfortable mirroring that aspect of Seashell's budget and
okay.
the 5% and 10% later on. Councilor Crowell? Yeah. Okay. Okay.
I was just seconding it.
I've moved it. Councilor Crowell seconded it. Further discussion on that item? Okay. All in favor of that? Okay. Okay, thank you. Now, did I interfere with another resolution? Did we have another one on the table, or did we not move the budget yet?
You have not moved the budget yet, so the end that staff be directed to prepare has not yet been moved.
We moved receipt, but we didn't give direction. So, with that done at this point in time, is council comfortable with directing staff to prepare the 2020 financial plan and the 2020 annual tax rate bylaw for council approval? Councilor Crowell, Councilor Ladwig, all in favor? Any opposed? Okay, Councilor Lumley opposed. Okay, thank you. You got that recorded? Okay, thank you.
And sorry, Mr. Mayor, may I jump in briefly?
Yes.
I'm just going to, regarding the second penalty for the 10%, I'm going to look into the tax regulation to make sure that the overall, there's no cap on the overall penalty of 10%, and you can actually go to a total of 15. And I will bring that back to council when I bring the bylaw back. If that's an issue, I just want to make sure.
Okay.
Okay, right.
Yeah, Councilor Ledwig.
I'm just a little confused. I'm confused why Councillor Lumley opposed it. He has to answer me, but like what happened there? Was it?
I wanted a reduction in the commercial, the business multiplier.
Okay, so you weren't comfortable with the 2 point, is it 8.9, Mayor?
2.9 something.
2.9, and you wanted it brought down to 2.3.
2.7, maybe 2.75, something a little bit more in line with other communities.
Well, we don't know what theirs is going to be this year. I mean, you are dealing with the history of last year, so then we don't know what theirs is going to be this year. So
I know, but my problem is that you're not reducing the tax on the commercial property. The problem is that it's not the people that own the property that pay the tax. It's the people that rent the property that pay the tax. It's just the nature of a commercial lease. Yeah. Is if you rent a building from someone, you pay the tax and you pay their insurance and you pay GST on top of everything. So
yeah, I'm going to go to Councilor Dean. Yeah, sorry.
The hardship. That's all. That's all I'm saying.
Go to Councilor D'Andrade first.
I wonder if we could ask the Director of Finance to bring the 2.7 for us to make a decision, because I understand, I mean, if we were in the current situation, I would say, no, we gave them a break last year or whatever, we adjusted. I share because obviously I understand what they are against. Obviously, I don't want to make a decision now, but I wonder if it's feasible that the financial, and maybe she can even say something right now, whether it is or not.
I'll go to Councilor Crowell first. David, unmute yourself.
We originally were looking at a tax rate of, I think it was 8 or 9%, or high sevens anyway. And we reduced it to 4. And the commercial rate is based on a multiplier based off of that. So, you know, the money still has to come from somewhere. And, you know, I appreciate businesses are taking a beating during all this. All you have to do is look at, you know, how many people did you have to lay off, Councillor Lumley, who, you know, are going to have trouble paying their rent and their taxes if they are in such
Everyone but one.
But it's, you know, I think what we're faced with is everyone is getting hit. You know, so we reduce it for you, and, you know, as the Director of Finance said, if we take it from Peter, we've got to gather it from Paul. So, you know, the fact we reduce the taxes from 7% to 4% is a huge reduction to businesses right off the top.
Good point.
I certainly wouldn't mind seeing what that looks like in terms of a number. If we came back, say, with a 2.75 business rate, and just to allow us to make that decision, we'd have to pass a resolution tonight directing finance to do that, and perhaps it might require the preparation of an alternate tax roll budget. I don't know how complicated that would be, just to show us the numbers or to send us out those numbers and we can look at them. And I see the Director of Corporate Services saying, no more work, please.
No, it's not that, Mr. Mayor. It's that you've already passed a
Yeah.
resolution instructing the preparation of the bylaws.
Yeah.
And so if you want to make those changes, I would suggest you repeal the resolution you've just made so the Director of Finance can make those changes and present them to you before the bylaws are prepared.
Right. Councillor Lumley?
And I apologize to the Director of Finance, but like another helpful comparison or a tool, maybe we could build it into the budget software that is on this budget. But it's really interesting to find when assessments, when you compare assessments against market values. I guess assessments, they're assessing the market value, but sometimes market values aren't exactly tied to assessments. But the only problem that I have is that all the upticks in real estate, small businesses don't get any part of that. And but as the taxes go up on properties, the small businesses pay more tax. That's the only issue that I have with the whole tax, the whole way that it works. And I know there's a model, we've looked at it before, where you have different values of homes at the different rates that they're paying. I think it should just be equitable, because if the market goes up 10% and you've got a 15, or look at the real estate pages, you've got a $2.5 million home probably 2 blocks from me. I mean, I'd like to see those ratios, you know what I mean? Like they get an uplift of $300,000 in their pocket. Well, they should pay a little bit more tax, shouldn't they? Anyway, that's just my thought. However you guys want to work it.
Director of Finance?
I can comment on that in terms of when assessments do go up, because the bulk of the taxes, aside from the parcel taxes, are value-based, assessment-based. They do naturally pay more taxes if it goes up more than the average homeowner in that same class. So generally, yes, when assessments do go up, and if they go up significantly, then and they're more than average, then yes, that owner would be paying more tax for sure. I also have a second comment on the penalty when that's appropriate.
So what do we want to do with this business tax rate? I understand your points, Councillor Lumley, and Councillor Ladwig, would you?
I think we should make a motion to ask finance to come back with a lower rate. I think it's a valid point. I think, right now, I hear Councillor Kroll that everyone's going to be paying a burden right now, but there is financial assistance programs for pretty much everybody but small business, if I'm not mistaken. And if there's anybody being hit right now through this pandemic, it's small businesses. And so maybe this year we do need to really take a hard look at that, and then maybe go back to it the year after. But I mean, it's all the small businesses' doors that are closed right now. Meanwhile, we can defer our mortgages. We can get a $2,000 help from the federal government, $1,000 help from the provincial government, just as individuals. But what are the small businesses getting? And I'm not clear on that. So,
Can I make a comment, Mr.
Yeah.
Mayor?
Please go ahead.
We did receive some information from the province a couple of days ago, and regarding these school tax, they have advised that business and light and major industry property classes will see their school tax property cut in half for 2020. So there will be some relief from the school tax line in the commercial tax notices this year.
and some kind of watchdog program to make sure they pass that on to the leaseholder. Hopefully.
Well, Councillor Kroll.
And this would be a question for Councillor Lumley. When I did the tax breakdowns for commercial properties when I was doing property management, I presented with the tax notice that the business was getting a copy of the tax notice, so they knew what the landlord was paying. I don't know if your landlord does that, but I believe by law you have to present a copy so they know what their portion of the taxes is, particularly when you have multiple units in the same building and you've got to work it out by unit entitlement.
That is correct. They do provide a copy of it. The unfortunate part of this year is that the taxes fall on July 1st, right? Isn't that like estimated to be maybe the time that people can reopen their businesses? Probably not a cost that you'd like to open your doors to immediately, like a tax bill. Mine's like $6,500. So that's your first bill you pay when you reopen your business. So that's a tough one, I'm not saying I have the answers, but it would just be nice to try and do whatever we could to help small businesses.
At least you're not buying a new furnace. Councillor Kroll.
This would be a question for the Director of Finance. And it's something that came up at the regional district when the original budget was proposed and people were seeing huge tax increases. Is there a way for, let's say, just commercial properties, we could set up a like a monthly payment plan that they didn't have to pay the $6,500 on July 2nd, that they could pay it over 6 months in installments?
Director of Finance.
We do have several businesses and residents who do prepay their taxes throughout the year, so they'll make installments throughout the year. There is no option in the tax regulation to, basically the rules that govern the due date and the penalty apply to all. You can't apply it to individual classes differently.
Councillor Ludwig.
So I'm going to try again. I'd like to make a motion that we ask the Director of Finance to come back to us.
We have to rescind the other motions first.
Okay, so who puts that on the table?
You'd have to. Yeah.
Sorry?
You would have to.
Okay, so I would like to rescind. Is that the word I'm looking for?
Yeah.
Rescind the previous motion to pass the 2020 financial plan bylaw and 2020 annual tax rate bylaw. Yeah, just to rescind that bylaw.
Rescind the resolution to prepare the bylaws.
Yeah. So we have a seconder. Councillor D'Andrade, seconded. Okay. Discussion.
Is there a did anybody oppose that? I wasn't sure if Counselor.
It's been seconded, so now we have to have discussion. Any discussion on rescinding? Counselor Kroll?
Wrong mouse. I was just wondering very quickly for sort of an example. There was reference to taxes due in June of $6,500. If we were to reduce the rate by, well, we're reducing it, talking about reducing it by 0.5%.
Well, I don't know. We haven't seen what we're going to reduce it by yet. So I think it was about 0.25%.
Well, we're at 2.97,
Yeah.
and Councillor Lumley would like to see it at 2.3.
I think he said 2.7 something.
Okay, so we're reducing it by 0.2. On $6,500, how much money does that actually equate to? I don't mean to be devil's advocate here, but, you know, 0.2%, we can't hear you.
It's 0.2 of a multiplier. So it's not just 0.2 of that. It's like, remember, that's already been multiplied 3 times, right?
Okay, we have a motion on the table to rescind. All in favor of rescinding the previous resolutions. Now I'm gonna vote in favor of it only to see the numbers, not that I'm voting in favor of the change. Okay, so
We all are.
yeah, all in favor then of rescinding. Okay. So we're back to square one, and we're going to ask the Director of Finance to come back with options for the multiplier for residential and business, because they both change, and see that how that impacts. And I guess the question is, go to the corporate officer, can we do this in terms of a special meeting sometime so that we don't disrupt the process too much?
Yes, we're going to have to look at that. I believe we had one tentatively booked for the 14th.
Yeah.
I'll have to double check, but we might have to keep that now.
Okay. You guys clear your calendars and don't plan any trips abroad between now and the 14th. We'll do that. And Director of Finance, does that give you enough time?
Yes, I can come up with something.
So the motion is that the council requests the Director of Finance to come up with options for reductions of the business tax multiplier. And do you want to give some targets, Councillor Lumley?
You're on mute.
Do you want to go to 2.75, 2.70? You're still muted, Councillor Lumley.
Yeah, 2.75, 2.7.
Okay. Is everybody comfortable with that? Somebody make that motion. Councillor Lumley make that motion. Seconded by Councillor Ladwig. Oh, do you want to say something, Councillor Ladwig? Go ahead.
If we're asking the Director of Finance to do this, can we ask for a bigger range, like 2.5 to, if she's
We could do 2.75 and 2.5. How about that?
Perfect.
Okay.
Just so we can get a range.
We okay, Councillor Lumley, with that? Okay. Will you second that then, Councillor Ladwig?
Yeah.
Okay. All in favor? Okay. Okay. Thank you. And do we need to set that next meeting now, Director? Okay. Well, we'll hear back. Okay.
I'll poll everyone for an appropriate date.
Okay, well done. Moving on to 7.2, which is the parcel tax roll review panel for water, sewer, community recreation parcel taxes. And Director of Finance, would you introduce this, please?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So the purpose of this report is to inform Council of the parcel tax process and request that a review panel be convened. So in accordance with the community charter, before a parcel tax can be imposed for the first time, a review panel must be convened to consider written complaints respecting the composition of the roll. And the town levies 3 parcel taxes: the water parcel, sewer parcel, and the regional district recreation parcel tax. The charter establishes rules around the composition of the panel and the date and time as well for the sitting. The panel must be at least 3 people, and our past practice has been that all members of council comprise a review panel. And I think this is at least your second panel as a council term. And we're also required to give advance notice of the time and place of the meeting, and we are scheduled for publication on April 17th and April 24th editions of the Coast Reporter once the date and time has been set. Additionally, we also have to mail a notice to all the owners that are every parcel that is to be taxed for the first time. And we need to advise the service in relation to which the parcel tax is being imposed, which would be water, sewer, and/or recreation, the taxable area or frontage if applicable, and that's not applicable in our situation, the time and place of the first sitting, and then that the parcel tax roll is available for public inspection at the municipal hall. And so due to the COVID restrictions this year, we'll be making an electronic version available for anyone who makes requests to look at the roll. And so the panel can only consider written complaints that have been received by a deadline, and there's very specific guidelines to what a person can lodge a complaint under. So we've got letters ready to be mailed based on the discussion tonight. And regarding financial plan implications, the parcel tax roll review panel process enables the town to charge the parcel taxes on the newly benefiting parcels.
Okay, thank you. Motion to receive the report. Councillor Kroll, Councillor Ludwig, all in favor of receipt? Thank you. Okay, it's received. And the recommendation that council convene a parcel tax roll review panel at 2 p.m. on Tuesday, May the 5th, 2020 in town council chambers, and further that all members of council be appointed to sit as members of the parcel tax review panel. Somebody make that motion? Councillor Lumley, Councillor Kroll, discussion? Councillor Diendrad?
I'm just curious, since we are not going to be there, how this is gonna happen.
Same way we're doing it now. It would be done. This is a meeting of council that we're attending tonight, so it'll be the same kind of process. Councillor Kroll?
I just don't know, is it necessary that I guess in the advertising, they could say that it will be conveyed on Tuesday, May 5th in the council room or by electronic medium?
Well, people could actually be in council room. There is room there for the public, so if somebody was opposing it, they could come and be there. Whether we're there or not, that would be see how we're doing business. Councillor Kroll?
Last year, I recall the roll was about a 3-minute meeting.
That's correct. Yeah. Yeah, unless we get anybody challenging it, and which we will know in advance, so that we'll know whether anybody's come, then we just convene a meeting, go through the process, and we would adjourn it. So we have to wait until we see. How many, Director of Finance, how many letters are there to go out this year?
This year is substantially lower than last year. Last year we had quite a few. This year I believe it's going to be, I think it's going to be about under 10.
Okay.
Yeah, about 10.
Yeah. Thank you. Yeah. Okay, did we get a mover and seconder for that? Or did we pass it? Nope. So somebody like to, I think we moved and seconded, then we discussed it. Okay, yes. So all in favor. Okay, thank you. And Director of Corporate Services she'll do her magic and arrange the meeting however it's done. So thank you. Okay, 7.3, and this is the Director of Infrastructure Services. and this is the Shaw English deadline expropriation. Director of Infrastructure, would you like to introduce this, please?
Certainly, thank you, Mayor Beamish. I'm going to have to defer to Lindsay, our Director of Corporate Services, on this one. I went partly on memory here, and the date of that was given to the owner of Lot 22 was in a letter that we brought back to Council to review with Council, and that date was April 7th for a response. And I've had a decent conversation with the lot owner, very friendly, and he was respectfully requesting an extension to June 7th. However, in looking back, I realized that the date actually never was in a resolution, and yet it was in a piece of correspondence that Council had seen. So I'm not really sure. I mean, I don't think a resolution needs to be made, but perhaps it's just yeah. Anyway, perhaps the Director of Corporate Officer, or sorry, the Corporate Officer can tell us.
I would recommend a resolution just to clarify the date, because the previous resolution referred to a letter that contained the date. So it's almost like supporting documentation.
So are we comfortable, Mr. Newman, with the proposed date that the owner's proposing?
Yes, I am, and largely it is for the same reason a lot of things are getting delayed. He's got his kids at home, and this does require some time on his part. So I certainly don't have any worries about that request.
Okay, first of all, the first resolution is the Director of that the Director of Infrastructure verbal report regarding the Shaw English expropriation deadline be received. Somebody make that motion. Councillor Kroll, Councillor Lumley, all in favor of that? Thank you. And to the corporate officer, do you have a specific wording for a resolution at this point in time that captures exactly what we're doing here?
That
Identify the property or?
Sorry, I don't have any of the previous documentation before me.
We're only dealing with one expropriation, so maybe it can be as simple as that. But,
I understand.
It's lot 22.
Sorry,
Lot 22.
Lot 22. Motion to extend a response deadline for Lot 22 regarding expropriation be extended to June, and I'm sorry, I missed that date, June
7th.
7th.
Okay. Somebody care to make that motion? Councillor Dindrad, Councillor Kroll, all in favor? Thank you. That's passed. Thank you. Thank you, Director.
Thank you.
Director of Infrastructure Services, O'Shea Road Tree Retention, bracket 2, bracket. This is over to you again, Mr. Newman.
Thank you, Mayor Beamish.
Councillor Kroll, you're in it? Councillor Kroll?
Yes, I just noticed that June 7th is a Sunday. Is that problematic?
I don't know, sorry.
Corporate officer?
I believe it is, no.
No, okay, thank you. Okay.
Okay, so O'Shea Trees. So you recall that staff reported to committee of the whole on March 17th regarding some concerns the developer had about the health and safety of the trees along their O'Shea frontage, and that caught a lot of councillors by surprise, and staff were instructed to look into this a little bit further. The resolutions are there, but essentially what staff did was, because the arborist report was completed by an arborist that was retained by the developer, we felt that perhaps a second opinion might be warranted, and that new arborist report is attached. Essentially, the both arborists agree on some of the health concerns of the trees, But I think the resolution for how to treat that is where it differs. And so the Michael Mills, the author of the staff or the town report, indicates there is the general thought is that these trees will remain relatively safe under most conditions within a 20-year time frame. However, he does recommend that the trees should be cleared of dead branches, thinned of limbs that may be broken or have been damaged, and selectively pruned where there are no, to eliminate rubbing or crossing branches. And with that, these trees will be significantly less prone to branch failure, and as such, the site can be made relatively safe. After reading the report, staff does support the retention of these trees with some additional requirements. And that is on page 3 of my report. The first one is that the recommended maintenance work be completed by the town according to the arborist report. Staff are of the opinion that the maintenance work should be completed on these trees regardless of the development occurring. And at this point, staff is of the opinion that there's a good reason to be asking the developer to front those costs. The second provision is that the developer will put security in place that is sufficient to replace the trees should they be found to be damaged from the work already completed on site or be damaged during excavation or construction. One unusual thing that the our arborist had found was that although there had been evidence of root heave on the asphalt of the old RCMP building, there was little evidence of roots after the asphalt had been removed. Now the ground has been disturbed. However, it does not indicate, there's nothing on site that indicates that roots have been removed. However, we will not know for certain until excavation continues and is carefully done. Which brings me to the next point, that an arborist of the town's choosing be required to be on site during excavation and periodically during construction at the developer's cost to ensure that the tree roots were not damaged by the site works completed to date and that the roots remain undamaged during construction. And that part essentially wouldn't be a surprise to the developer. And then in addition to that, one of the concerns that was raised, and in my opinion justifiably so, is that we're putting in a sidewalk and curbs, and sometimes these larger trees, they don't mix well with that that sort of treatment right next to them, and the roots can end up heaving the sidewalks. And so staff is suggesting that a gravel walkway, which is, we call it crusher dust, it's similar to a lot of our paths in town, be constructed instead of the typical concrete sidewalk. So it would still provide access for pedestrians, but in a manner that isn't going to invest as much money, and would be easier to address should the roots disturb the walking surface at all. The table there at the bottom of that page is staff's calculation of the suggested security that could be taken. That it would be adequate to remove the trees, replace the conifers in some other place, or supply conifers in some other place of the town, and also provide screening trees. And I wouldn't suggest that we plant conifers that would have a similar carbon sink as the ones there. However, they could be planted somewhere else. And so those trees are performing two services. They're performing more than that, but two that we're concerned about. One is the carbon sink, and two is the screening. And so therefore, we kind of have to have both. And if we're going to try and replace them, is we need to retain that carbon sink and also provide new screening. We typically take 120% of the value of works, and that comes up to 20,520, which is staff's recommended amount. And then, as I say, should they be damaged, it's possible that if a key tree or two is damaged, that all of the trees will have to come out because they protect each other right now, and they act essentially as a unit. And so it's we could look at having to replace all of them. So based on that, my recommendations are on the first page. But of course, I'm happy to take any questions in regards to this.
Thank you, Mr. Newman. We'll move first to receive the report of the Director of Infrastructure Services, Councillor Kroll, Councillor Ladwig. All in favor of receipt? Thank you. Thank you also for getting a second report done on that. I think that's very valuable. I've paid more attention to those trees now since our last meeting. And every time we go down the road, I look at them, and they're actually a more impressive stand than the photographs suggest. And I'm really pleased that we're looking at it. And I'm also reasonably confident that they can be properly cleaned up and trimmed. Now, your first recommendation is that they be council direct staff to complete the pruning. Is that our own staff, or is that through an arborist?
No, sorry, that you're right. That is misleading. No, we would have a contractor come in, and a certified arborist to come in.
I've actually seen some of the pruning of staff, and some of it's good, and there are some places where I've wondered, what happened here? So yeah, I appreciate that. So that, but I'll defer now to council. Does council have any questions of Mr. Newman? Okay, I'm going to stop at my top right corner, Councillor Lumley.
Yeah, thanks for the report. My question was, I'm for everything on here, but obviously we wanted to keep the trees. I know that it's what do you call it? Modular. So I know there's going to be a bit of excavation, but probably not as much as if you're building down for the ground or parking and all this other. Is there any way that the potential risk for root damage, is there any way that this can be marked off or even blocked off? So the potential for, I mean, those trees are pretty far from the property itself and from where the building edge will be. Is there any way to further protect it from being damaged by potentially, like, marking it off, like protecting it from any possible risk?
Yeah, we would be barricading the trees off and providing fencing around it or ribbons during construction. And you were talking about during construction, I assume. Yeah. Yes, that will be taken.
Okay, next was Councillor D'Andrade.
Thanks, David. I was quite pleased to see this second report. The first one was so devastated when, first, the compromise with the roots that we understood, and second with the aggressive pruning. I think I just want to make sure that, the second arbor is the one that the town retained. Obviously, he gives a different picture, but I just want to ensure that they're not going to top the trees again, right? They're just going to do the minimum, like
they're going to be doing the minimum, yes.
Yes.
I think that there are some that they would have to remove some of the tops, but it's certainly not as dire a forecast as the previous arborist had indicated. I also do want to stress that I'm not doubting or suspecting anything, but because we can't see the roots right now on the private side, there is the possibility that there has some damage has occurred, in which case we would have the bonding to do what was necessary. But I'm definitely optimistic that we can save the trees and have them looking as reasonable as we can.
Councillor Ladwig, I'll come back to you. You're back there, Councillor Ladwig, okay? Yeah.
Thank you, Dave, for that report. In your first bullet, the recommendation, it says that it's recommended that maintenance work be completed by the town as per the April 1st, 2020 report. Maybe I'm not sure if I read it correctly, but are we proposing that we pay for the maintenance of the trees, or the developer pays for that?
No, I'm saying that we pay for it because, in my opinion, the maintenance needs to be done regardless. And I don't really feel that we would be on firm ground to be asking the developer to incur that additional expense to maintain trees that really are our responsibility to maintain and should be done regardless of whether the building goes in or not.
Okay.
And no, I mean, council does not have to accept that. I would just, I would be cautious as to whether council has the authority to be asking for that at this stage. We can ask for the security, but I'm not. I would have to. I just have to caution council that if they wanted the developer to pay for it, that there may not be grounds for it. You know, there's certain things under rezoning, certain things under you know, building permit and so on. I'm just, yeah, uncertain as to whether that is an authority that council would have or not at this stage of the game.
I just know that if I remember correctly, the developer offered to pay for cutting them down. So
And replacing them.
This would be a far less expense, in theory, I would think. I think it'd be a good gesture on their behalf to pay for it. But
I can, if council wants to direct me, I can certainly approach them.
Councillor Kroll?
Once again, Dave, thank you for getting the this additional report. From the get-go, every presentation we were faced with, the developer said the trees on the property were going to be preserved. Now, maybe that's a loophole because these trees are on town property, not the actual subject property. But I think that's a moot point at this point. You know, the fact that they had an arborist report going back to September and they only sprang it on us less than a month ago, you know, so I sort of agree with Councillor Ladwig that we should say that they absorb the cost of the pruning as per the direction of the arborist. And if the trees survive because of the pruning, then they're off the hook at the other end for the security bond at the end of the covenant on that bond.
Could I suggest that rather though than making that part of a requirement, we make that, give that direction to Mr. Newman, that he approach the developer with that as a first choice, and just say that, you know, council has asked that you, which council has directed that trees be retained and has asked that you have them maintained or trimmed as per the report that we've received, and they pay that cost, and just see how they respond, and then come back and say, well, maybe we'll share that cost with you. How about we do a 50-50 and stuff like that? So maybe there'd be a bit of a negotiation. In any event, we do, bottom line is we would have to move forward and have it done. Councilor Deirdre?
I just want to emphasize on the request that it will be the town's arborist, the town engage someone to do, because I don't feel confident that they should do any work at this point.
Yeah.
No, that's correct.
Yeah. Okay, with that, is every council comfortable with that understanding, as opposed to be given that as a resolution and simply move the resolutions as they exist on page 6 or in the report? And those are that direct staff to complete the pruning, that the developer required to provide security in the amount of $20,520, that the arborist of the town's choosing be required to be on site during excavation and periodically during construction, and further cash in lieu be taken for the proposed sidewalk on O'Shea Road and gravel walkway to be constructed at this time instead. Just a question I have on that, Mr. Newman, is that would we be doing curb to that gravel or just leaving it as curbless?
No, it would be curb along there. So there is always the possibility that that curb could become damaged. However, the adjacent asphalt, although it's in poor shape, does not appear to be showing signs of damage due to roots. But yes, it will be a concrete curb there. And there will be an asphalt bike lane, but it's moving over a little bit further as well from where the edge of pavement currently is. And then behind the asphalt bike lane would be the gravel walkway.
And then the timing of that pruning, would that become after the excavation, just to make sure that you don't prune the trees and have them all looking good and then have to take them down?
I suppose that might be prudent. And there may also be a time of year that would be recommended to do that. And I think, yeah, if you let staff work with that, but I do take your point, and that's fair. I wasn't clear on the second resolution, Mayor Beamish. Right now it says that council directs staff at the town's cost. Do you want that reworded to say, and that staff request that the developer pay for that?
Or negotiate the cost sharing with the developer when we're there. How does council feel about that? Do you want that in the resolution, or do you want that to be kind of an issue on the side? Councilor Diandrade?
I think given the hardship that we will be facing, I think we should ask. And if they say
agree, we
no,
should
maybe
ask.
we negotiate the future. And another, I would like to just clarification from the director of infrastructure, because there's a clause, other policy. It says, should the trees remain undamaged, staff is suggesting that the developer approach council for a variance, in which case the cash in lieu could be returned prior to the completion of the project. I'm just wondering, sometimes I wonder how precise it will be. We will be able to see if the damage of any root system has been occurred, and sometimes this will take maybe 1-2 years to see. So I wonder, why do we give immediately the money back?
So for starters, that's in place because in order for them to vary the bylaw, which requires a concrete sidewalk, they actually need to approach council and say, and go through a variance process. And so I've worded it in such a way that in the immediate interim, the gravel be put in. And typically you wouldn't do it this way. You would have somebody long in advance be asking for that variance, but timing wise, it just doesn't work. I am thinking that the arborists that we have should be able to, during excavation, should be able to expose those roots because they haven't gone down that deep anyway, but they should be able to carefully expose them and establish whether or not they have been disturbed and damaged so that we have some confidence before doing that. But I take your point. If there is any doubt, then we don't have to, we would take that cash in lieu, and the concrete sidewalk may need to go in future. But if we are, if the trees do prove to be able to remain, I suppose in 2 years, we might find a way of returning that cash in lieu. I'm not positive on how that would be done. Yeah.
Might be valid to let it go through some seasons though, and to see how it responds to.
Yeah. And I know that we have, I believe there are mechanisms to release cash in lieu if for instance, if our road standards have changed and say we took cash in lieu for streetlights and our standard no longer requires those streetlights. I don't know if the Director of Finance has any experience in this area or not.
I don't have enough to comment on this situation, no.
Going to go to Councillor Lumley or Ladwig, sorry.
Just as a side note, we built our house 5 years ago, and the cedar in our front yard is starting to die now, we believe. and we've gotten a quote to have it cut down, and we've been quoted $5,000 for our one tree. Now, having said that, it is a bigger, trickier tree than the ones on this road, but I'm just putting that out there as a caution that these things can get costly and they can take a bit more time.
Yeah. Councillor Crowell?
The other thing that Mr. Newman, that you mentioned was when it was appropriate to prune. My experience is you don't prune trees at the beginning of the growing season. You prune them in the fall when they're going dormant. So are you telling us this whole project is on hold until the trees are pruned?
No, I'm not, because I don't see any reason why the trees can't be pruned after the building is completed, if that was the case. It's not essential that they be pruned prior to the construction of the building, I don't believe. And back to the cash in lieu item, because it's not part of a resolution, I don't think that we need to necessarily worry about it at this point. We can tackle that a little bit further down the road when we've had a little bit more chance to look at what the options are as far as cash in lieu and releasing it at a later date.
So the question is, do we want to include in the resolution that we ask the developer to pay for the cost of the pruning of the trees? And okay, I see some thumbs up around the table. Okay, so let's add that to the resolution that direct staff to complete the pruning of trees on O'Shea Road according to the arborist report, and that the developer be requested to pay that cost. And do we have a number for that cost, David? Or
I do not.
okay, just so it's fine. And then you can come back to us if they refuse to pay. Then we look at the other ways.
Unless, and I defer to the corporate officer here. I don't know if the word request gives the latitude to staff or whether or what.
And that's a good point. It would be, well, council can make the decision how much latitude they want to give staff at this point. With that first resolution, I would remove at the town's cost if you're going to be adding in
Yes.
to request of the developer. And if you want to be more specific, I would put right in there that you'd want staff to come back with the developer's decision or with any other cost sharing
Proposal, yeah.
proposals. Yes.
Mhm.
Councillor Lumley?
I can remember, I think they got, what was the funding that BC Housing, was it $14 million? And, you know, the neighborhood's been put through enough. For them, it would be like a PR nightmare if they refuse to start doing things now after. I just don't see any reason why we shouldn't ask these guys to pay for it. And I don't see any reason why they'd say no. So I think it's a smart thing to do.
I agree, and I would also like to see that security in the amount of $20,520 be held for 3 years.
Mayor Beamish, do you feel that if a arborist has reported back to say that the trees have been not impacted by the construction, or if he was confident in saying that you would be comfortable in having that bonding released?
As long as the arborist is prepared to stand behind his recommendation.
Certainly, okay.
And hold that. But you know, I think that it does take time for the trees to adjust and to know. The other thing is, I think we have in our policy already that if the trees are damaged during the construction period, that they are responsible to replace them as well. Because I could actually, one motivation for removing these trees could simply, it's going to be easier to move the modular units onto the property.
Oh yeah, that was definitely a consideration, I'm sure.
And so that it's you know, like access to a garage, you know, it's easier if the trees aren't there.
Yes.
And so that I think that we're not there to make it easier for them. That we're there to kind of protect the trees in the community, and so that I would propose we add it in there for 3 years, and if they want to come by and apply for that, it's like a landscape bond. How long do we hold a landscape bond on development?
I believe it's 2 years, and if I'm wrong, the director of planning can correct me. She's staying on mute. That's a good sign.
Sorry, I had a hard time getting off mute.
Okay.
We hold a landscape bond for 1 year, and then we return, I believe, 90% and retain the other 10% for another year.
Well, that's something to look at then. Do it the same way we do a landscape bond or something. There is the ability to hold a bond, and I think that's one thing we want to do. So, and we'll say up to 3 years. Is council comfortable with that? The amount to be retained up to 3 years after the completion of the project. Okay. Okay, with that, corporate officer, you have that amendment?
Would you like me to read it back to you?
Nope, nope. I'm not comfortable. If you say you got it, then
Yeah, so you said two things in that last one. So I just want to clarify that you want it for 3 years after the completion of the project?
up to 3 years after the completion of the project.
I don't think I can put holding the money up to 3 years because,
Well, let's put for 3 years. They can come back and apply for a change.
Okay.
Like people do with the landscape bond too. They come and ask for it to be returned sooner. Okay, with those changes, would somebody like to make the recommendations? Move the recommendations. Councillor Kroll, Councillor DeAndrade. All in favor? Thank you. That's approved. So
Thank you.
trees. Yeah. Councillor, sorry, corporate officer.
give me a promotion. Thank you.
I don't know if it is or not.
I would just like to break in here, if you don't mind, before you move forward to 8 council reports. The Director of Finance would like to revisit the earlier resolution that dealt with the tax penalty for 5% as of the July date and 10% as of the September date. And I'll let the Director of Finance speak now.
Okay.
Great, thank you, Lindsay. Yes, I just, as we were on the meeting, I was looking into the legislation, and really the total tax penalty can be 10%. You can stagger it 5 and 5 or 3 and 7, but you can't go over 10.
Right.
And so I'd recommend that council adjust the second one to be 5 as well, or do a.
Oh, sorry. I had understood we were doing 5, and then we moved it up to a total of 10.
Okay, good.
Not just
Okay.
10, sorry.
Yes. Okay. So 5 in July, and then 5 early September.
That's right. Yeah.
Excellent. Okay. Good. Thank you.
That's what I understood. I don't know if the rest of the council understand that. Yeah.
So it's 10 total. Yeah.
10 total. That's
Yes.
correct.
Okay. Good. Thank you. And the other, if I can keep the opportunity, I wanted to provide council at the end of my budget report an update on utilities as well. So the spring utility season is about to start. So we're on track with invoices will be mailed next week, and they'll be due in mid-May, which is our traditional due date. We've confirmed that the spring cleanup program can proceed, and we'll have the coupon in with the invoice. We'll also have a brochure, and then we'll have a leaflet that provides information on where people can find COVID-related information that the town is making available. So I just wanted to give you a reminder that utility billing season is about to be launched next week.
Thank you.
Okay, you're welcome.
Is there anything else that council can think of that they want to put into as a notice or add to the package with the utility billings, or in terms of information to the public? Councilor Ludwig?
Well, I'll just take this opportunity to once again, I think I've raised this about 2 or 3 times now. I've always said that I thought the utility bills is a great opportunity for us to provide a newsletter from council. Yeah. I'm not saying in particular what I think this 1-page newsletter should state right now, but I'm just once again reiterating that I think we're doing a mail out to all our residents. It'd be a great time for us to do hey, here's what your council's up to.
Yeah, it's not all our residents, but all the tax-paying residents. So that we do again with the tax notices have that same opportunity, I guess.
It's the Director of Finance here. So with the utility, I'll just clarify with the utilities. With the tax notice, it goes to every property owner, and it includes vacant land owners. Utilities only go to owners with improvements. So the tax notice is a wider scope in terms of getting information out.
Okay. Could we make, actually, I would like, can I make a resolution that for this year's tax bill that we include a newsletter from our council about the things that we're working on? And it's not, so right now when we get our utility bill, there is often a news, a little information brochure in it, but it's about utilities. I'm talking about more broadly what it is that we're working on, whether it's affordable housing, it's this short-term rental policy, the tree policy, like the stuff that we're actively doing.
Or what they're getting for their budget.
Yeah, sure.
The taxes, in other words, you know, the different projects we plan to do and things like that.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So I would like to make that motion that we, for this year's tax bill, that we include a newsletter, a one-page newsletter. Can I get a, can I do that?
Okay. Councilor Diandrad, second that. Are you doing? Okay. Any further discussion? All in favor? Thank you. Thank you. Okay. See, Director of Finance, you knew you were going to take a risk when you came back and talked to us.
That's okay. Actually, I think that might end up on the communications coordinator's desk. But it's good to get information. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Okay, I got to get back into my agenda, which there it is. Okay. So now we're into, I think we're into council reports. Is that correct, Corporate Officer? We can move forward?
Yes.
Okay. Council reports. Is there anybody listening to us tonight, or are we just talking to ourselves?
We've had a couple of people in and out. We don't currently have any members of the public with us, but we do have Connie from the local and Sean from the Coast Reporter.
Okay. All right, well, we'll talk to them. So going around on council reports, does anybody have anything they'd like to report for the this evening? Councilor Diandrad, you had something I know, so go ahead, please.
Thank you. Sorry for the counselors that already heard that because we had other meetings, but I have been in very close contact with the Gibson Senior Society. They just elected a new board. They just sent me an email like talking about the meeting. Obviously, I want to meet the new board. Some are members that remain there. They have been very active with the meal program twice a week. They have been average around around 45 meals every time. And the cost is just $7 is at cost. And obviously people pick up, and I believe some people that they cannot pick up, someone from the society is delivering. What their plan is, the very short term, is just to send a survey for all members to understand, what's going on, what they need. And another statistics is 80% of the seniors, which are around 300 people, 80% are computer savvy. They actually have been making payments online for these meals. And the 20% will be reached by phone and perhaps other means. I have asked them if any other person that wants to purchase this cheap meal, if will be okay, and they said it's okay. Perhaps, if they can make a contribution for, the membership is $20, but at this point will be 10. Maybe in a few months will be 5, but they are happy to provide. So this is what I have for now. I also, because I have been in the Sunshine Coast Communication group, I don't know if everybody's aware, but I got very good news on Friday that the food banks are very well stocked at this point. So these are very good news. And there's a new poster also for the society. I'll send to council, for this information.
Thank you. Councilor Kroll, I saw your hand up.
Thank you, Mayor Beamish. I've had sort of weekly EOC meetings. They've gone from 3 times a week to 2 times a week, and they're fairly helpful. The task force, which was an initiative of Mayor Seegers, The web page is up. It's still being developed, but what it's intended to do is give people a single point that they can go to get information, everything from food, transportation, bereavement, public safety, um, education, food, you name it. It's pretty well there. And then on the 2nd of April, Director Ties, Director McMahon, myself, and Mark from Area F had a tour of Elphinstone aggregates. And earlier in the year, Mayor Beamish and basically the same group did a hike up Elphinstone to look at the site from above, because there had been some significant logging, which was visually is a bit alarming to look at. It's a totally different perspective visiting the site. The owner of the site is Julian Burtnick, and it's really quite surprising. It's as big as it's ever going to be. They've done an assessment. They've got about a 20-year supply of gravel. All the gravel is used locally. So what it does is, and the site has also now incorporates ready mix and BA blacktop. So all the prime users of the material coming out of the site are almost on the site. Also within the site, they do green waste. So a lot of the green waste from our site goes up there. They sort of break it down, chip it, and is taken to the mill in some cases as hog fuel. So they have a source for it. The topsoil and that's sort of separated out of it is treated, and they're sort of stockpiling that on site. All their water is surface water that's accumulated in a series of ponds and goes through a filtering process. So they're basically, except for the electricity they use, self-contained. And they're looking forward to how the site will be returned in approximately 18 to 20 years. And they have material on site to begin the reclamation. They're also looking at the site as to what other purpose it might have, whether it becomes a secondary industrial site or whether it becomes residential. It's probably not an ideal area for residential because it's appreciably colder up there because of the elevation. The lower village, it was drizzling rain. When we got up there, it was snowing. But it's a really impressive operation. It's good equipment. It's well-maintained equipment. They've got, their water reclamation is good. And I was quite impressed. I think all the directors that attended were really impressed with it. So that's about it for me for now. Unless you have any questions about the site.
Yeah, you didn't notice anything then that, in your view, either with the BA blacktop operation or the concrete or the gravel, that will pose a risk to our aquifer?
To clarify on that, we only visited the gravel operation.
Yeah.
We'd have to have set up additional appointments to see the other people, and because of the current sort of COVID situation, even the gravel pit was a little awkward because, separation and we all had to go up in separate vehicles. But, it would certainly be worthwhile visiting the other sites. But if I would, I wouldn't venture to say that they're all as well maintained, but certainly I would suspect because they are new sites and they've been sort of done under the eye of Mr. Burtnick, I would hope that they're as well run.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Ludwig.
Yeah, thank you. I just have a quick comment. I spoke with the Affordable Housing Society recently, and they informed me that they're losing 2 board members. So they're down to 7 members, and they're putting the plea out there to the community to try to find some new members. So if you guys happen to know of folks that you think would be a good candidate, then please let me know. You know, as we all know, this is a really important society for our community, and they have some important projects on the books. And so, yeah, if you know of anybody that you think would be good candidates, we'd really appreciate it.
Thank you. Thank you. At this time, I'm going to ask for a extension resolution for 15 minutes if council is comfortable with that. Not that we have a lot left to do, but we do have correspondence and more council reports to go yet. So if council comfortable to extending for 15 minutes, need a resolution. Councillor Kroll, Councillor Ludwig, all in favor? Thank you. Okay, we'll extend for 15 minutes till 9:15. So Councillor Lumley, do you have anything you want to mention? Okay, Councillor Ailish McKenzie.
Yeah, so if anyone was at the meeting last night, this isn't necessarily news, but Gravity and I presented our idea for a Sunshine Coast Youth Council, and it received quite a bit of support from the surrounding communities. So we're really excited to take the next steps into making that happen. It should be in the next week or so. We're going to send out like an actual document that outlines what the council would look like. And that's just a rough outline. It's still open to critiques and all of that. So we're hoping to have it ready to go for September 2020. So, yeah.
Yeah, it was really good to see Nicholas Simons and Patrick Weiler also on that call and support that they gave as well. So that I think it would be a very valuable asset. And I know the other communities have been looking for ways to involve the youth in their governance. And I think this is a good opportunity for them to do that. So I appreciate the leadership on that. That's good. For my part, I've been involved in conference call after conference call after conference call. It's so we do have a regular schedule. We've got the coastal health conference calls on Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. I don't think there'll be one this Friday, being a Good Friday. We've got the provincial conference call with the Minister of Municipal Affairs, and that is on Thursday. I've got a regular conference call with Darnelda, or with Mayor Seegers and Chair Pratt and Chief Paul, and those are on Monday, Wednesday, Friday. And then we have a regular conference call with Nicholas Simons and Patrick Weiler, and that's been at 5 o'clock on Friday evening. Whether that'll happen this Friday or whether they'll change that to Thursday, I don't know. And those are just kind of catch-up calls and coordination calls. And in addition to that, I know that other things going on. I sent out my 4th message to the community today. I have opted to do that instead of doing the video, although maybe now that we have the technology up and running, I'll do my own Zoom call at some point. I'm not sure my preference is that we put things in people's hands so they can read them. This one I took a different tact on because it really is, people are getting inundated with wash your hands, stand 6 feet away from each other. And I think we all know that story now. And I chose not to kind of reiterate that. We did in the newsletter or the statement provide a link to our website so that people can actually look up and see COVID information should they choose to find it. But I really wanted to take a pause and acknowledge all of the good things that are happening in the community and recognize those things. So I'm hoping that it gives people a little bit of a break from all the news they've had to contend with. So I will continue on those conference calls, and as I can, I try to send out my notes afterwards to everybody. And somewhat, as you've seen, it's kind of that's the stats of the numbers of sick, numbers of dead, numbers of dying, sort of thing. And that's an unfortunate reality of this situation. But when I look at the curve for British Columbia relative to other provinces that's been reported, we really are ahead of the curve and have quite a level curve at this point in time. So we seem to be managing it. I had to respond to another cabin owner or house owner over here today who was concerned that we'd taken a position that we weren't encouraging seasonal residents to come over. I explained to him a big part of it is we don't know what you're bringing with you. And the resources that we have in the Sunshine Coast are tailored to the size of community and size of population that we have. And that our hospital is set up to service the people who are here. And countering the argument people get, yeah, well, I come over the summer and you service me. Well, that's because in the summer people actually leave here as well, so it kind of balances out to a net population as opposed to simply doubling the population. So there are things. It's a tough for a lot of people. I appreciate that, but I think that we're not the only community that is strongly urging people at this point in time to stay home, stay close to your own supports, stay close to your own doctors, and look after yourselves. And we'll try to do the same here. So that's the position I've taken with that. So, CEO, you have a report?
I've been here the whole night watching. I haven't said anything. Sorry if something's wrong with sound. That's probably why I shouldn't say anything else. I just want to also share with council that staff here continue to also play an active role in the regional emergency operations center and working well with our colleagues. And it's been double duty for most of us, and so far so good. But otherwise, we're still working through adjusting to our situation, but trying to get to a situation where we are giving people enough breaks, knowing that the extended and expended effort is going to last a little bit longer. But otherwise, we're doing best we can. Thanks.
Director of Corporate Services, could you comment on where we are with the Business Watch?
Yes, we've processed a number of applications to date. And at this point, Ed is just pulling together a schedule. And I believe we'll be up and running by the long weekend.
And the interest from elsewhere?
Yes, we've had a lot of interest from elsewhere. So I've been involved in a call and a video chat today with the District of Seashelt, and then I believe it was Comox this morning, who are very interested in the program, and we've shared our materials with them.
Excellent. I think it's a good one for us to export if we can, because people are looking for that kind of help. And I really appreciate the patience you had with me, because I was always wanting to get this initiated yesterday. But doing it right and having something that has been approved by MIA and approved by our lawyers enables other communities to pick it up and not have to go through a similar process. It's an approved project, and I believe it was commented that MIA had asked to put on their website so that they could actually publish it to other communities. So I think it's a good model, and thank you very much for all your work on that. So, anybody around the table here have any questions of anybody else? Well, you see all our good-looking faces. Okay, seeing none. Thank you for that. We'll go on to item 9.1, council correspondence. We have a package for March the 9th and the 26th. I'm going to ask council's indulgence here as well, and the corporate officer's indulgence. I'd like to add the March the 30th council correspondence as well. Has everybody got a copy of that? March 30th council correspondence? Okay. I have, and I'll tell you the reason why I want to add it. There are a couple items in there that I think that by the time we get to them, they're going to be old, and one in particular I wanted to address. Corporate officer?
This is a good time just to put out a reminder that when the correspondence package does come out, council can action it at that time. You don't have to wait until it's accepted at the council meeting.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you. So if we could add March 30th to the resolution to be received, and then I'll bring forward a couple items on that. You'll see, and you can bring them up again at a later date, but at least the couple items I'd like to bring forward on that. So if council, should we do receipt of it first? Receipt? Councillor Kroll, are you moving receipt?
Going to move it to receive as amended to include the 30th.
Thank you. I'll second that, get it on the table. All in favor of receipt of the correspondence, including the 30th? Okay. Okay, I see 3 hands, that's enough. And, okay. So anything from March the 9th that anybody wants to raise? Anything from March the 26th that anybody wants to raise? Okay. Councillor Kroll?
Can we do it in date order? Is that appropriate?
March the 9th is what sorry, I didn't see February 24th there. I'm sorry, I apologize.
Yeah.
Yep. Let's go back to February.
There are a couple of things on the 24th. The Mayor's Forum, one of the things that came up in it which was significant, is the RCMP are negotiating their union agreement.
Yes.
And they haven't had a wage increase since 2017.
Yeah.
So I think that's something we really have to be aware of going forward with our budgeting for policing.
Yeah, I take the report on that.
In the February 24th, jumping over to March 2nd, which would be the next date. Did we extend a letter from council to Chief Warren Paul when he was elected, just sort of congratulating him?
I extended my personal congratulations to him after the election, but I don't believe we did anything from mayor and council. Could certainly do that. Sorry?
Would it not be appropriate?
Well, certainly it's fine if you make that motion, we'll write a letter. Yeah.
I'd like to move that then.
Okay. Seconded by Councilor D'Andrade. All in favor of drafting a letter to Chief Warren Paul and other members of council. I think we should congratulate the whole council on their election.
Thank you. Then moving on to the March 16th, there was the pharmacare letter, which they were looking for some support for. And I'm just looking. The Kiwanis Village were looking for a letter of support for their development project. And they've been sort of a long time player with, dealing with a lot of issues for not only housing, but care in the community. And I think it was the March 2nd, they were looking for a request for a letter of support for their project. So I think that would also be very appropriate. It fits into our strategic plan with housing needs and elderly and the more vulnerable in the community.
Do we know what the proposal is? We're going to have to consider the proposal at some point in time, and that will be.
They're looking at creating a new building within their facility, then demolishing the old one and replacing it with a new one. So it is a series of building projects that would go forward to. Whoops, I'm being stopped here.
Yeah.
I apologize. I didn't mean to stop you, but the green screen erases my hand unless it's directly in front of my face. Yeah. If you wanted to finish.
No, I guess my question is, Councillor Kroll, would we not be having to at some point in time make decisions on that development when it comes forward, as opposed to writing letters of support that?
I suspect that they may be looking for outside funding for the thing, and I think what they're looking for is an assurance that once the thing came before the town, that it is something that fits with our ideals.
Yeah, I would be cautious about fettering our decisions going forward. That's all, that's where my caution would come in, is having to kind of, I certainly support the concept of going forward with it, but
perhaps if better eyes than mine had a look at the letter and vetted it for potential conflict.
CAO, do you have any comment on that? Whether we should be commenting on a development before we consider it?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, my view is similar to yours. I'd rather wait a little bit more, but I would be happy to have a look at that letter again, Councillor, and let's see if there's anything more beyond that. So just make a note of that.
Thank you.
Do you have anything else, Councillor Kroll?
I think that was pretty well. There's a lot of stuff, people writing about STRs and being occupied by people from off coast, but that's the bulk of the ones I had highlighted.
Councillor Dindra, did you have anything from the? Go ahead, Councillor Dindra.
Just a quick question regarding the farmers market. A question perhaps for the CAO. Did anyone approach at this point for farmers market?
To the CAO?
Could you be a bit more specific, please? What the question is?
Okay, there's a letter, I believe it's on March 26 file that okay, it's just a lot of that the society, along with the One Straw, and they provide all the guidelines for farmers market, but I understand that they're getting some, also asking support in a way for like, sorry, I don't have the letter open because I changed the computer and now it's very hard for me to access, but okay, if you haven't got any approach, I'll send a letter to see where they are. I don't know if we will be able, I think I was more curious if we will be able to have the market and if there's any willingness to support that.
Mr. Mayor?
Mr. Machado?
So what, if I understood it correctly, so I saw a note today from, so two things related to that. The public market, the farmers, obviously the farmers markets themselves aren't taking place just yet, but the province has determined it to be essential services. So the program is expected to go forward, and the vendors downstairs are open, and the market is asking for support for people to continue to get their goods from the site and support the business that way.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Yeah. The items I had, I just want to bring forward from the 30th. One is a letter from a Tanya Barlow received, and that deals with a property on King Road. Do we have a King Road in Gibsons? I know there's one in the regional district. They say
No.
they're in Upper Gibsons on King Road, and they're asking about short-term rentals and things like that. I don't think King Road is ours.
No.
Could somebody take a look at that and respond to them directly? It's dated March 23rd, and just let them know that what the request that they're making to us needs to go to the regional district. And otherwise, if it sits there and we don't respond to it, it's going to be in our mail file for a while, and it's going to have a frustrated person. There's another one from Minister of Environment and Climate Change burning restrictions, and that's just come out on that. And I'm concerned with the amount of burning that's still happening in the regional district, and I wonder, Councillor Kroll, if you would want to bring that forward to them and express our concern. I've actually had a couple of people in the regional district complaining that they go on our website and they can't find anything about to stop the burning. I said, well, it's not we're not in the regional district, and it's your problem. So, Councillor Kroll?
There is my understanding from the EOC, there is a burning ban with the exception of campfires. And my understanding through conversations with the fire departments that it's a provincial order for a burning ban in place until the end of May, to be reviewed at that point, depending on the concerns are not so much, well, A, it's been dry, but the other concern is we're dealing with a respiratory virus.
Yeah.
and the
Yeah.
smoke is something that exacerbates that.
And that's exactly what this says, but there still is smoke in Elphinstone. And so that's the one, if we could bring that forward to, maybe you could talk about the
I'll
regional
bring it up on Thursday,
corporate officer.
and I'll bring it up at the EOC tomorrow afternoon.
Corporate officer.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just to break in at this point, we've got 1 more minute until the extension runs out. And I just would like to bring up, I do have an item that requires clarification before the meeting is adjourned, in case you're considering a motion to extend.
Okay, let's go to new business. No new business, no notice of motions. Any inquiries? Corporate officer?
A bit unorthodox, but I'll get my clarification under inquiries if that's okay.
Good.
I didn't catch it before because I was trying to get our YouTube live stream going, which unfortunately didn't work for the meeting tonight. But council accepted the minutes for the regular council meeting of March 17th earlier in tonight's meeting. And resolution 2020-146, which was passed at that meeting, is just a bit vague. And I was just wanting to get some clarification from council on the intent. So that motion currently reads that reduced rates be considered for residents providing affordable housing options in the 2021 budget. And staff's understanding is that the rates referred to water and sewer user rates for residents providing affordable housing options, and that be considered in the 2021 budget. And I just wanted to get council's understanding on that one.
Councillor Ladwig?
Just to clarify, did it say 2021? Sorry, it's hard for me to open up. It said 2021?
It doesn't. So the resolution right now is too vague, and we went back and listened to that part of the tape, and council passed that reduced rates be considered for residents providing affordable housing options in the 2021 budget. And staff, after listening to the recording, suggestion would be that reduced water and sewer user rates for residents providing affordable housing options be considered in the 2021 budget. And whether that's council's understanding for the intent of that motion.
Yeah. Yes. I'm surprised it's the 20. I thought it'd be even the year following, because I thought we're done now.
Yeah, I understood it was for the future as well, that we're done for this year, but let's look at it for next year.
Yeah.
For the 2021, sorry if I wasn't saying that correctly.
Yeah.
No, you were, so 20.
Yeah,
Okay.
we're the 2020 budget this year, and we're already done and
Oh, the
passed.
2021, right? Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. It's getting late. It's getting.
Yes.
Yes.
The clarification you needed?
Yes, thank you.
Actually, sorry, it's Director of Finance. We need one more bit clarified. Can you define what you mean by affordable housing options?
I think if I.
Yes, go ahead. Yeah.
I think that's part of what we need to explore. We had some discussion during that meeting that there's different analysis on what affordable housing is, and I think that's one of the things we have to look at.
Okay, all right.
Come in
Thank
the
you.
report.
Go back to that, yeah. Okay, any inquiries from the media? Seeing none. Going once, going twice. Next regular meeting will be Tuesday, April the 21st at Council Chambers at 7 p.m. And there'll be no further business and no hands motioning. Move for adjournment. Councillor Kroll, Councillor Lumley, all in favor? Thank you. We're adjourned. Thank you. Now you can talk about anything you want. We're all here. Anything else you want to talk about?
I would just caution council, this is still an open meeting.
Yes, right. And it's recorded too, is it not? Yeah.
Yes, I've recorded it. YouTube didn't work out for us tonight, but I'm going to post it after the fact.
Okay, good. Okay. Well, thanks everyone. It's certainly interesting technology, and so we'll be seeing more of this, whether we're going till the end of June or the end of July or into the distant future. I don't know, but it's certainly appreciate the challenge. But mind you, it's actually comfortable staying at home, taking meetings. I've done a lot of them. So, I will be in the office tomorrow briefly because I'm only allowed to be briefly in the office, so that I'll be there. Okay. So everybody have a good evening. Thank you very much.
Thanks,
you.
everyone.
Special thanks to staff.
Thanks,
Good night, council. Thanks.
Thanks, Steph. Thanks, everyone.